Hey guys, I'm Scott Brown, the developer for the game Journey for the Crown, and this is my 22nd devlog. This month I've been working on this new city. It's a little different than what you may see in some of my other designs. It has these windy roads that kind of connect all these different houses together, and I didn't want it to be a overly populated city, so I kind of came up with this idea. Now my objective with this city was to populate it with some life. There's no NPCs, so I'm going to go ahead and add NPCs that you can sell you loot and ingredients and that sort of stuff for crafting. And then also set up all the crafting stations that you'll need as well. Now, sparing you all the boring parts, it's a very difficult job putting all this together with NPCs. I tend to do a bit of copying from the other city and bringing it over, so I did save myself some time, but it has been a long haul of putting this all together. Now, I also have to populate all these houses, because right now they're just empty. I've got quite a few assets already made, so it's just a matter of me putting things together and placing them and then merging them so that they're optimal in terms of graphics and GPU performance. Now, this is going to be the first NPC's house that I'm working on. I've got plans for her to be kind of like an explorer, more of a retired explorer, I suppose. And there's going to be some story built into her, and it's going to also lead you to a couple quests that you can do as well. Now, I also have, because she's an explorer, I did decide to maybe throw the jewel crafting table in here as well. I don't always have every crafting station built in to every city, so where I can, I sometimes design them in there, and this is one case where I decided that I think it would be appropriate to put that crafting station in her house. Now, on that same note of making sure that I make an attempt at adding as many crafting stations as possible, I felt like there was a bit of a gap of space in the central part of the town here, so I decided to put a cooking station here, or stove. Now, I just had to cut out some of the grass and make some room for this stove. I also felt that this kind of stove, it does need like a rooftop just to kind of complete the look. So I'm just going to go through some of my assets and find an existing, it's kind of like a rooftop terrace. And I believe it was just from an ordinary house, and I just took the walls off. But a lot of these are modular design assets that I make in Blender, and then I do merge them inside Unity. Now, with this look, I think it's pretty good. I'm happy with that design. Now, the next thing I want to do is populate this. It's kind of like a A-framed house, and I was just sick and tired of looking at the same bed that I've been using in some of my houses. So I wanted to make a kind of like a double bunk for this building, and I believe I'm going to be designing it as like a guard's barracks, and so I'm going to put together a double bunk here, and I'm going to use my existing design, and we'll get some concepts from Google. Like that one there is pretty good. And I think I could go with something like that, or I might just simplify it and go with like that, like a double bunk. It would be very easy to replicate. Now, some of you are probably laughing I'm using the old Blender here. I don't know, I really like it. I don't really want to relearn the new one. It'll probably be something I'll do eventually, but I really like Blender. The old one did the job for me. I do have quite a few things that are set up in particular ways using the old Blender, so that's partly why I haven't updated yet, but I do make quick work of this double bunk here in no time, and a lot of the UV mapping is saved here when you start moving things around like the way I'm doing. It's already been done from the previous model. Now that that's done, I'm going to go ahead and put this inside the room here. And I think the idea is to just put them along the walls and make a path right up the middle. I'm going to decorate them up with some pillows and cushions and that sort of stuff. And we'll put some carpet down as well, just to make it look nice and cozy in here. I'll just have a little peek at what we just made. That looks pretty cool. I like the look. We got some pathing to fix up, but I'll work on that later when I'm done the whole scene. But that is a nice looking little house, I think. I think maybe some guards out front. The next place was the clothing merchant. Now this one's going to sell like fancier outfits and basically like items with stats possibly too. I'm just grabbing a bunch of the assets that I do have from another one of my zones just because this is a lot of work to put this all together. I'll just space things around, and instead of spending hours and hours redoing all this stuff, I figured we'll take a bit of a shortcut on this one and work with what I already have. So yeah, I'm making quick work of this here just because I did that. Just taking a peek and see what I got here. I like the look. I think it looks pretty snazzy. On to the next task. Now, I've got lots of rectangular tables in the game, and I wanted to actually make a tablecloth round table. So here I am just kind of designing a round structure here that's basically going to drape over a round table that I already have. Now, with the textures that you see here on the right side, I do have a multitude of different colors that I could use. So when I do this, I do often save a variety of different colors, and that helps break things up a little bit. Maybe there's like a theme in a castle where they're red, or another castle's green. That way I'm not just using one asset for one castle. I can use it in a variety of different spots. So I like the idea of doing this one here red, and maybe a gray one with some like imperfections around the skirt of the tablecloth. I think that looks pretty cool. Now I wanted this one house to be an inn, so I decided to copy that structure you see there from another zone that's in the main city. It's a portion of the big inn. Now, instead of just copying all of it over, I did take that chunk out, and I'm going to redesign it and basically place it behind this bar here where that round table is going to be placed. And you won't be able to go into it or anything. It's just going to be in aesthetics, so that like when you visit this place, it has the appearance of an inn, and there's places where people are lodged and stay over. Otherwise, the building structure was just too small, so that's what I'm doing here. I'm just going to duplicate the actual other side and flip it and snap it together. This will make for a really nice looking inn, I think. It does come packed with drapes already set up and windows. It's just a matter of basically placing it on the ground here. Now, I did have to retrofit this existing building to attach a staircase to the inn portion, so I'm just going to go ahead and put that there. I'll use some existing stairs that I've already got pre-built and add that in there. I went a little further with that and added a bartender to the inn. I copied it from the other zone because he's got a whole bunch of items like liquor and alcohol and beer and all that stuff set up. So passed him over, and I just changed his appearance a little bit. And I'm going to go ahead and also set up all the drinks behind the guy here. Just taking a look at it here. On the outside, I really do like the look of the inn. I even gave the rooftop a bit of a bowed look. Having a peek on the inside, you'll see that I added all these different round tables. There's a little one and a bigger one, even some booths. Now this is a coastal city, and just like the main city, there is a dock area, and this is your boat. You just talk to the captain here, Rufus, and he basically will chaperone you wherever you want to go. Now, there's only a few docking stations. The idea here is to utilize the boat to travel to some of the far distant places. But once you acquire the ruins, which is a teleportation magical function in the game, you kind of just avoid having to take the boat. However, the boat is kind of like an experience per se, and the boat just kind of appears wherever you are. So if you're in one area and you just go check out the dock, he'll be there. He's always there. So an interesting little way of moving around. I was playing some Titan's Quest the other day, and I noticed they had some really neat looking tents. I got some ideas from there, and I started putting together my own version of a new tent in the style that I saw from that game. I do have a lot of different tents and colors and all that stuff, so I'm going to make a few varieties here, and even add some like cool little tie-down ropes just to give it that extra detail. It's interesting how those little tie-down ropes really add that extra detail to these tents. I decided to do another one here, more of a triangle-shaped tent with no backing on it. So went ahead and did that as well, and we'll do some different colors, I believe, too. And as usual, just going to check how it looks in-game. I really like the way these tents look. It's going to help a lot when I'm putting it all together. Now, I added some more things like carpets and that sort of stuff because I'm going to be laying down some merchant areas here in front of the castle and kind of make it a bit of a town square. Now, the carpets look really good. I like them. You can kind of shape them in different sizes. I do need to set up the grocery assets here, so I'm just using these boxes of wood and filling them up with these little tiles of fruits and vegetables that I've made. I do have barrel-sized round ones too that I use. Now, just going through the different merchants, you can see that she has some items to sell now. Now, just finishing up all the NPCs and that, I did notice that I needed a little bit more lighting in here. So I'm adding some light posts to all the pathways in here. I'll probably add about a dozen or so. Now, moving on to the outside of the zone here, I wanted to add some quest obstacles like this broken down caravan. I wanted to have a stranded NPC that you could help. And I was going to make it into some sort of like, it could be a conflict resolution for you via like a battle with enemies, or depending on maybe your chosen background in the game. Like you can choose different backgrounds when you create your character. Like it could be a carpenter or a farmer or that sort of stuff. Maybe there's some more easier approaches based on that too. So here I am just piecing together an NPC here with some of the code that I've designed. Now that code is designed to work with the pathing system, and it's all target based. Now these quests need to all relate back into town here, so I'm just going to go run back to one of the quest givers that I did create and make sure that everything is correctly rewarding you for the things that you did do. Now I didn't really like the beach sand in this zone. It's not south far enough that I feel like it should have this Caribbean freaking sand shore. So I decided to go with this stone look, which I tend to do in some of the, I don't know, like the neutral European areas. I don't know if they had sandy beaches or not, but anyways, I thought it stood out. I do have a better style of shoreline here that I'm going to use. It's a combination of this rock here and mixing it with actual rock assets and then blending them together. It's a really cool look, and it's one of my newest tricks that I've been applying to a lot of my scenes. Now, another type of quest I wanted to do was, right now there's like this giant field out front of the castle, and I wanted to break it up from the usual knoll camp that you're supposed to see that caravan. I decided to do something completely random. So I came up with this idea of making an area that is kind of like burnt and scorched because of a particular enemy that's going to reside in here, and it's kind of flaming and creating this burning area that could spread. And I wanted it to relate back to town, where maybe there's a quest post about this sort of encounter, and it's not like pressing to deal with. It is an optional quest, but I thought the idea was kind of neat, and it's just a little side quest for you to do. The next step is putting some fire in here and making it look like an event is happening. I do have some other ideas that perhaps that you can, by dealing with the threat that's in here, the fire will disappear and stay disappeared. But I was thinking of the idea of maybe someone coming back in here later on and doing this encounter again without the quest. It is a thought that I thought would be kind of cool. So here I am just really dressing up this area to make it look like it's geez, a blazing forest fire now. The next step was to add the villain that's going to reside in here. I wanted it to be a dead walker, which is like a zombie in my game. I've made some ice ones before, so this one's going to be a fire version. And we're using some emissions and a complementing of particle effects to really give this thing a cool look. Now, because he is on fire, I didn't think wearing shorts and hair would be appropriate, so I got rid of that, but I had to fix up his emissions just because he didn't have any done on his legs. Now I'm just putting some particles in here, and I'm going to make sure that they're done with world particles, because as he moves around, I think it would be cool if the fire stayed on the ground. So I'm just piecing all of these different bits together, and I'm really liking the look so far. Now for this event to really work well, I wanted to add what we worked on my last devlog, was the damage areas. Now it uses a collider, and when you walk inside it, it basically deals damage to your characters. I'm going to carefully place this over all the areas that I see fire, and just size them accordingly. Now in order to tie this to the town into a quest, I didn't have a portrait for one of the guards that's standing beside the quest board, so I decided to just grab a face that I already have and just jazz it up with a helmet. I do sometimes reuse faces like this and utilize helmets to kind of disguise them. Here I am just kind of painting it through and kind of making it look like the guard that you see here, and now I can access the quest to start this event. So to go and test this thing out and see how it looks, I did change the particle effects on this fire enemy so that they do follow behind him, kind of looking like he's leaving a trail of burning ash. I also made it that when you do kill him, the fire will disappear or dissipate, and kind of giving you the feeling that you've resolved the situation, and then you can head back to town to collect your quest reward. Moving on, I wanted to start creating all the items for this zone. I haven't started any of it yet, so we also had to iron out some of the naming of all the knolls that you see so far in this area. I have been keeping track of everything in just an Excel file for now, but eventually all of it does go on the website in a wiki form, and by having mob names unique, it does dedicate a nice page to them where you'll be able to find all the details and stats. As I was putting together some of these enemies here and giving them names, I decided to make one of them a Beastmaster and give him a wolf pet. So here I am just adding a new wolf pet. Now, I kind of racked my brain over this, thinking that they need to be tied together in some fashion or another, but really I just ended up adding an extra enemy and making it seem like it's the Beastmaster's pet. It's literally just a separate enemy, but in essence it does work the same. And so yeah, that was a cool idea, I thought. Now things get real difficult here when we start creating hundreds and hundreds of items. I've got a very large list of items that are empty with no stats, and they're set up basically through scriptable objects. And what I end up doing is I duplicate them, and then I start adding stats and do kind of a reverse fashion of putting them together. So, I got to keep track of all these items that I have dished out. I've started using more folders and storing them in there. And I also have a graph of how many stats I should distribute based on the enemy that contains the item, the rarity type. So there's a lot of factors involved that I've been using as a systematical approach for creating items. Now with some of these new items, I needed to make some art icons as well. So I've just been going to Bing lately and using their image creator to get some real quick and easy trinkets and jewelry items. So here I am just kind of grabbing a couple icons and just making them into just little tiny square icons that I could use. I'm going to make a whole bunch. I don't know if I'll use them all, but they sometimes they generate ideas as I'm putting them together. Kind of like this dragon eye I wanted to make. Now moving on, I decided to make a little section here in this zone that's going to be for undead. I think it might be a different level than when you first arrive here. Maybe like 10, 15 levels later, you can kind of peek around and have a look. So what I'm doing here is I'm just putting some zone wall trees. You typically see them around the zone of this level, but I wanted to try and trick the user and make it seem like they're following the zone wall, because that's what a lot of people seem to be doing in this game, is they scale the walls of the zone and kind of get an idea of the entire area. And that way I just kind of trick them and put a little doorway into this small undead region here. So I pieced it all together, and this is what it kind of looks like. It's not completely hidden from your view, but I wanted to give it a stylish little entrance and make it look like some sort of graveyard. Now, I did use these erosions here that you'll often see in my game, these purple rocks. There's a lot of story behind them, and I'm going to actually be showing you a little bit more about that. A few little corrections I had to do. I noticed some of the grass was appearing through these graves here, and of course that isn't natural, so I'm just fixing that up. There's quite a few of them. In fact, the grass literally hid these graves from being seen. From the angle, the grass really does look like it's quite populated, but it's actually not. It's not as bad as you think. Now, finish that off, I decided to make some, instead of like undead deadwalkers, I was going to use skeletons in this area. So I'm just fixing up some animation stuff. My skeletons really didn't have too many animations to them, so I'm adding a couple that I'll be able to use for new abilities. I've been going through all of my enemies and trying to make all of their abilities in a big like stockpile that I can kind of pull and use on the fly when I make all these different zones, because it takes a long time to put them together, and I figured I'm just going to crunch it all out, get it done, and you know, if I have like a dozen or so of these things, I can mix and match them and make interesting varieties of skeletons or whatever enemy I'm putting together. As things started to progress, I decided I wanted to put a lighthouse in this zone. Similar to the other zone, there was a lighthouse in the main city, but it was a little bit south of the city, and I think that's kind of typical of cities and coastal areas, is the lighthouse isn't exactly in the middle of the city. So I'm placing this thing to the north of the city, and I'm going to make an encounter out of it too, where you won't be able to utilize the boat. The idea was to force you to do a quest if you wish to get the boat to actually work to this location. Now, with this encounter, I wanted to have some guards that were undead, so that's the reason why the lighthouse wasn't working anymore. And I also wanted to have some gnolls there as well that were part of a conflict. So a two-staged sort of encounter. While I was doing this, I noticed that there was this charge effect that the gnolls have, and it wasn't working. So I spent a couple hours trying to fix this problem. I eventually did find the source of the problem. There is a bit of a game loop that handles some stats and visual things, and I actually had the speed functionality of the charge ability was being checked in there. So sometimes it would work and it would look good, and sometimes it wouldn't. It's because depending on where that was in that loop, you would get speed applied based on its timer and not when the ability fired. So I changed that around, and now when the ability fires, your speed gets applied. And that's traditionally how all of my abilities work. I don't know what I did there. Maybe I just didn't notice it, but she's all fixed now. The next thing that I was putting together was the quest board in town. I've already added a bunch so far, but the next one I wanted to lead me into was another zone. So not everything that's on the quest board is actually going to be in this same scene or zone. Sometimes they take you outside of it. This one in particular is actually going to take you a few zones to the east of here, and it's going to involve a lot of story that you'll learn about your character and the villain in the game. It also introduces you to an NPC that's in town here, and the story with them is just they're an archaeologist. They have a keen sense for like dig sites and that sort of stuff. I kind of got this Indiana Jones kind of vibe with the character in here. So the idea with this quest board is to open that dialogue with them by making you do a simple quest that introduces you to them. So that's where I'm going with that. Now, as I moved along, I wanted to build a little bit more than just my typical NPCs that stand there and you can speak to them. This one I wanted to actually do some actions and events as you completed the quest for her. So I came up with this little bit of a timeline sequence, and you can kind of see it unravel here. Now, all of that design with the NPC was going to lead me to this new zone here, which is actually an old zone that I had pieced together. And I had plans to make it a small little city, but I've got already enough city stuff happening that I figured I should just get rid of it, save myself some work. So here I am just removing all that and patching it up with some grass. Now, it may look like I'm kind of going backwards here in the design, but I'm actually adding quite a few cool features to it. I with some of my zones, I tend to have too many square-shaped zones, so I'm trying my best to kind of break that up and get more of a maze-like feeling here. So I'm really separating some of the zone walls. I'm adding like little islands that'll be like blacked out and you can't get into. So I go ahead and do that here, and then I'll start to populate grass and foliage and vegetation afterwards. Now with the quests in this zone, I wanted to add a kind of like a monumental stone. It's actually going to be called the World Stone. And I wanted it to look pretty significant and like something that's, an important piece to the story. So I kind of fiddled around with some different stone looks, and I started applying some effects here. So far it's kind of looking, not the greatest, but, as everything, you start to build and you find things that work. And here I am just playing around with some different effects for the terrain, because what I'm after is I want to build a kind of like those erosions I was showing you earlier, but like a bigger version of it. And this one's going to represent like the healthier version of the planet and this effect that's happening to it. So here I am going with this like yellow color, and which will represent that it's healthy and it's not sick, while the other one that you see is purple is like a sickly version. Now with this area, I wanted to actually create a bit of a conflict between the good and evil crystals that are in this area. So I added a bunch of different nodes that would actually have like the infected versions of it. And then I also created a bunch of enemies. I got rock golems and some evil wisps that could either help or be against you. And it took a lot of piecing it together, but I created these stone golem things here that kind of guard the stone. And they can help you out if you want, just by dragging over enemies to them. So it's an interesting way of having a different version of combat than normally you would see. Well, that's all I have for this devlog. It's been a really long one. I appreciate if you got all the way through the video this far. I've been working tirelessly on this game. I actually had 2 weeks vacation, and I brought my computer with me and did a whole bunch of work. It was a lot of fun. I wrote so much stuff, and put some of this stuff together, all these scenes. So things have been motoring along, and it's been really fun. I have been working a lot on writing, especially this sequence here. It had to cover a lot of plot holes that could have been there, so trying to iron out those things has always been a difficult task. I'm extremely critical of myself, I suppose, and even in movies too. When I see plot holes, I find it breaks my immersion, so I'm trying my best to ensure that doesn't happen for the players who play my game. Anyways, that's all I got for this devlog. Hopefully see you guys in the next one. Cheers.